Now, various political and labour organisations have held events to recognise the contribution of workers in the country. May the 1st is observed worldwide each year as International Workers' Day. It's also known as May Day. President Cyril Ramaphosa has defended the proposed national minimum wage. He was addressing Labour Federation COSATU's May Day rally in Port Elizabeth in the Eastern Cape today. The South African Federation of Trade Unions accuses COSATU and FEDUSA of failing workers. The rival Trade Union Federation held its own May Day rally in Bloemfontein. COSATU in Gauteng marked Workers' Day with a twist by marching to steelmaker ArcelorMittal. The foundation is demanding the company be re-nationalised along with petrochemical giant Sasol. In Uitenhage, Eastern Cape, the South African Communist Party spoke out against corruption in government as well as state-owned enterprises. Meanwhile, economic freedom fighters called on workers to unite against multinational companies in order to build an alternative socialist future. The Democratic Alliance celebrated Workers' Day with Wellington farm workers. The party says workers have benefited from the farm equity share scheme that the DA is championing.
Comrades, within the next few months, workers in our country are going to achieve another historic victory with the introduction of a national minimum wage for all working South Africans. Now, comrades, nifuna nivisise kakuhle. This is a victory for the workers of our country, no matter what other people may say. This is also a victory for COSATU, in particular, which was the first to really forthrightly raise this issue.
Home of Legends. Yamkela umongameli womzantsi Afrika, umongameli we-African National Congress. Ungena ngaphakathi enkundleni.
COSATU leaders and now even President Ramaphosa himself have admitted that 20 rand an hour is not a living wage, yet they are forcing millions of workers to try and survive on it.
The worker rights are enshrined in our constitution. And it is not because we were doing some favor to workers. It's because workers in South Africa fought in combat, side by side with their fellow comrades, to make sure that when Freedom Day comes, the rights of workers will be protected by the Constitution. We are at stage now, Comrade Ace, not to complain anymore. We are not going to be coming and complain about the movement. We want to make things happen as COSATU. The ANC, when you face some challenges, when we have challenges, we're complaining to the ANC. But the ANC can't complain to anybody else. The ANC can't complain to government. So when the mayor was complaining about potholes, we said, no, mayor, don't complain, fix them.
There can be no victory for socialism if our state institutions are stolen. Nevertheless, Comrade President, whereas when COSATU, no Sanko, we are glad that today there is some progress. There is light at the end of the day.
Let's now take this debate on a more broader scale as the country marked May Day today. I have guests in studio, Solomon Mahlangu from the SATAWU, who is the national coordinator, and as well as the AZAPO Azapo National Spokesperson Mangu Nohuka, as well as Amos Munyala from COSATU, and Advocate Ntuse Lebepe, who is a political analyst. Good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us on AfroView. And let's take a look at the broader picture here. The president was on the podium saying the national minimum wage is a victory for workers, and irrespective of what the critics have to say. Let me start with you, Tate. What is your comment on that as Sanko? What do you feel in terms of what the president had to say today?
No, thanks. Let's take this opportunity to thank you for inviting us and also congratulating for your launch. We are part and parcel of Alliance. We've been in the network. This is our victory. We can't be seen talking against it. It's a victory indeed where, if we are to talk in terms of rent, a person who was getting plus minus 800 is going to get 3.5. It's a victory, it's an increase. It's bigger money into the pocket of somebody who never had this opportunity. And we must take this space to clarify it. It is not a living wage. It's a minimum wage which was never been there. We fully understand what is a living wage. We are striving to arrive there, and we will arrive there. So let us not be fooled by those who are speaking for sake of public, turning this matter into a public tournament for the sake of cheap politics. This is a victory for the country and victory for the poor.
I'd like to bring COSATU's Amos Munyala in the conversation. What are your sentiments as you hear what the president has also had to say? Do you see this in what sort of standing for COSATU?
No, good evening to yourself and your viewers. Let's also thank you for inviting us to clarify this thorny issue, which is being used for political expediency by those who no longer have a political grounding in our country. So we must understand it in the context of minimum. So minimum is the beginning. So the national minimum wage is the beginning, is the road towards the living wage. So what the president has said, we appreciate the work that has been done. We appreciate the introduction of the national minimum wage. We've been fighting for the national minimum wage for years. So this is victory to workers. If people want us to give them statistics in terms of where our people are in terms of different sectors of the economy, you look into the farming economy, agricultural sector, people there, workers are earning R7.14 per hour. So if you look into domestic workers, they are earning R7.20 per hour. You look into those who are petrol attendant, are earning at around 14 Rand per hour, and then those who are also working into the hospitality industry. So now, if you look into that worker who earns 1.8 per month, and then you take that worker to 3.5 per month, it is a leapfrog. In our view, this is the basis for further collective bargaining. We are strengthening collective bargaining. We are going to the national, we are going to the living wage. Post the living wage, we must struggle for socialism, because all what we want to see happening is socialism, where workers will be treated the same, will be earning the salaries that will be able to assist them. We are happy of what has happened. We've been struggling for this. In fact, even those, our detractors, who are part of us when we were engaging on the issue of the national minimum wage at Netleg, they supported this party. Today, they are misleading workers. They are telling workers lies day in and day out. We don't know as to where are they trying to take the country to. From where we are, we've achieved, we're happy, Aluta continua forward with the living wage.
Let's bring in our guests on the telephone. We have SAFTU's Patrick Craven, who, of course, as we saw last week, hundreds of thousands of workers took to the streets against this minimum wage. Mr. Craven, thank you so much for your time. Welcome to the conversation. What are your thoughts as you hear the rival unions speaking on this matter?
Well, as you might expect, I totally disagree with both the other speakers. In no way at all can we call this a victory. Both COSATU and the President himself have admitted that 20 rand an hour is not a living wage. And to draw the parallel with workers negotiating with an employer, I think says everything about what is wrong with this deal. Basically, the employers have won. They had to make a small concession from the figure they originally agreed, but that's normal in negotiations. But these were not negotiations. These were a fundamental issue. And it's astonishing that Cosatu can say, well, this is part of the road to socialism. How on earth can anyone regard as remotely linked to socialism a society in which people can be expected to live on the 20 rand an hour when the people who rule this country, the employers, the capitalists, and for that matter political leaders, earn thousands of times as much as that? It's legitimizing and entrenching the vast level of inequality which we have in this country.
Let me interrupt you there and bring in AMCU's Joseph Matunjwa. Good evening to you, Mr. Matunjwa, and thank you for joining us. You have put out a statement saying that you were not interested in celebrating Workers' Day. Why is that so?
Good evening to you and to the panelists. Yes, AMCU do recognize May Day as an international Workers' Day. We pledge our solidarity with the workers all over the world. But however, we need to, us as a South African, to contextualize the circumstances that we are faced with. On 2012 August, on the 16th, the democratic government massacred 34 mine workers. Hence, we are saying the 16th of August must be recognized by our government as a South African Workers' Day.
Let me move this conversation further here and also invite our guest, ZAPO National Spokesperson Manku Noruka, who is also joining us in studio. You know, this 20 Rand minimum wage agreement here, what is your sentiment on it? I mean, can we assume that it will total to the more than 3,000 Rand salary that is assumed to come together when this amount is all formulated, given the fact that we don't even know if workers will clock the required hours to reach that amount?
Thank you so much, Mbo. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to come and share our views on this matter. We are deeply concerned that our country and our government, 24 years into democracy, it can really say that our people should earn this minute amount which is going to amount to 3,400 at most. You know, when you look at the workers themselves, when they went on, for them to be able to even be celebrating this Workers' Day in 1923, it was because of the victories that were there. And the workers, they wanted to ensure that at the end of the day, that they win and they bring down the capitalist system. Now, if we are, there's no way that we can bring down a capitalist system by putting our people into a minimum. In South Africa, we've got two parallels. We've got the haves and the have-nots. And the haves, which are predominantly white, and the have-nots, which are predominantly blacks. A white person who finishes school today, they just shoot straight to executive level. They do not even go to that level of the 3,300, the 3,500 that has been proposed. And you look at the black person, a black person would be said that they have to work through the ranches and ensure that they go up the ladder, and which is a problem. Now we are saying at this stage in our country we should not be celebrating the issue of the 3,300 with the 500 and saying that the 20 rands per hour is really a victory, because we've got workers of Marikana who died, who said they want 12,500. And if you calculate it in terms of hourly times, that is 72 rands per hour. And that was in 2012. Now, are we simply saying that those workers, they died for nothing? Can't we push to ensure that we're talking of a living wage rather than a minimum? We are pushing our people to minimums. Why is black people always have to deal with issues of minimums? Every time when you deal with a black person, you have to put a standards of minimums. It's a problem to us. And that is our concern at the moment. Let me
rope in Advocate Lebepe here. It's a tough environment in a tough economic time. Just to bring in some analysis here, there's opposing views on this matter. There's as Ntwena, the ZAPU spokesperson, was mentioning now, the haves and the have-nots. What is your sentiment on this?
Let me start by thanking you, Paul, and all the viewers of Afro World View. To be honest, taking into account the history of us South African and the history of workers from the agrarian forms of economy, and now trying to have a mixed economy in South Africa. So, it's quite embarrassing to hear both COSATU and SSCP embracing what the president of the ANC said today about the issue of a minimum wage and this 20 rand payment a day. You understand? We have in this huge wage disparities between the rich and the poor, and in trying to redress the injustice of the past, and you celebrate what the president has said about the issue of a minimum wage. A minimum wage to what? You understand? This is an insult to workers. Workers our workers have fought hard for the liberation of this country. They've participated in the MDM structures previously, and now today the former leaders of this COSATU today they go and insult and spit in front of the face of the workers, spit in the face of the workers to say, no, you must accept a minimum wage. This is a good thing to start. It's where we're supposed to start. It's totally out. It's supposed to be discouraged. The problem that we are having today is that we don't have an independent thinkers within the Federation, COSATU itself. You go today, I'm surprised again with my colleague from COSATU, because today his president said, is concerned about the manner in which the ANC is taking its direction, more especially deviating from the resolution of Nazareth resolution about radical transformation, about nationalization of mines and all sectors, strategic sectors of the economy. You see, seemingly, the ANC is supposed to be told that undermining workers is very dangerous and is going to affect the ANC. You understand? There's no way. The COSATU is not happy. The president of COSATU is not happy. And above all is this confusing ideology of the ANC. You understand? You will not know whether the ANC is taking the socialist ideology or is taking a capitalist ideology. It has a confusing ideology. And also, Blade in Zimad, who must, it's a shame. Understand? I think it's an insult to also the self-proclaimed communist on what he said about saying we must fight capitalism. We must try to be seen, the ANC must be tried to be seen as an organization that is going to address the interests of the poor. That's not true. It's an insult. The
Free Market Foundation Executive Director, Leon Lowe, who is on the line joining us there. Leon, good evening to you. The wage disparities here have been pointed out as a huge concern by my two guests who've spoken a short while ago. What is your view there?
Well, it's firstly my congratulations to the workers and the incredible work they do, seldom being recognized. and it's therefore let's celebrate Workers' Day. What is really sad about it is that the real wage disparity is not between high and low income earners, but between income earners and non-income earners, the unemployed. We have 1 in 3 South Africans who want a job. 2 out of 3 young black women want a job and can't get one. And if I were to ask you how to make South Africans unemployed, you could not do a better job than has been done. It's an incredible accomplishment to make so many people unemployed. And let me point out, to prevent small businesses, or most of which would be black, in other words, to prevent transformation of people who would employ entry-level workers, low-income workers, unrecorded informal workers. So what we really should be weeping about is the lack of concern that has been mentioned on this program so far about the true tragedy of South Africa, the true inequality of South Africa, which is the unemployed people for whom labor law is absolutely inhumane and cruel. And in the minimum wage is even worse. It will drive more people into destitution and misery, and how any humane person can support it absolutely baffles me. We have the highest level of sustained unemployment in the world, and we should be ashamed of ourselves on Labour Day. We have anti-Labour policy, we have a department against Labour, not for Labour, and we ignore the truly miserable people in South Africa who would like to work, who would like to employ, and who are being prevented from.
Bring in Kosatu's response there. Thank you for that view. What would you say to critics who perhaps are saying that all of this is a sign of Kosatu's waning power?
Well, I'm not too sure as to where is that thing coming from, of Kosatu waning power, and the thing of Kosatu without independent thinkers and all of the things that are thrown at us. We are ready to take any insult, because from where we are sitting, we are representing the working class and the poor, and then we can tell them as to where the problems have started from. The problems that we are facing as a country is on the basis of the economic policies that we are having as the country, which are pushing workers into poverty lines, which are making workers to be destitute, which are not even responding to job creation. So those are the policies that have brought us to where we are. But then from where we are sitting, when we speak about minimum wage, we must not be myopic in thinking. We must understand the realities that are happening on the ground. We must think about the domestic worker on the ground. We must think about a petrol attendant on the ground. We must think about a farmer on the. Somebody who earns 10,000, by the way, will not see an impact of the national minimum wage in its current form. And we must clarify this thing. So we are saying we are at a minimum. So we're going for a living wage. I'm not too sure of the people who are saying the national minimum wage is the living wage. The national minimum wage is not the living wage. Our struggle continues to attain the minimum wage. So our critics will always be there, will accept where we've done wrong, but in this regard, we've saved the jobs of close to 6.2 million of workers who are destitute. We've saved those workers. They are now within the bracket of that national minimum wage. So we are resolute that this is the start. We know that it is not enough. We know that 20 rand is not enough, but then it is better than 1,500 rand, and create a platform for all of these trade unions to be able to engage for better salaries as and when we go. It is a building block. We understand the tragedy in Marikana.
I'm going to have to put you on hold there. Amku's Joseph Matunjwa there. We understand that your time is limited with us. Wouldn't you say that it's certainly a huge test for President Cyril Ramaphosa's new dawn at this stage with this lagging matter?
Just repeat again, sorry.
I'm talking about the president's challenges at this point. Would you not say this is really a test on his leadership capabilities?
No, it's not a test. Let's come back to the issue of this minimum wage. All this thing, it rolls down to the issue of neoliberal economic policies, of which the Tripartite Alliance, who shouldn't blame to any person but to themselves, because they are embracing the very same 3,500. It talks to the very same neoliberal economic policies that they are prepared to compromise the working class in the expense of foreign direct investors. So we as labor, as a class, we have to pay to feel the brunt of these neoliberal economic policies. When AMCO was championing or advocating 12,500, which led to the democratic state killing 34 mine workers, COSATU never said anything about it. And in the 5-month strike that we're in, we're being vilified by the very same federation, saying how can, with this Matunjwa is misleading the workers. So I'm not surprised if today they are singing on the same hymn book with the state president. And they are very inconsistent for that matter, our comrades, because if you remember the 2017 COSATU May Day, what happened? The former state president was accused of breaking the oath of the office and accused of corruption whatsoever. But now, the same president who's championing the slave wage of 3,500, the same president who's championing the brutal labor amendments that will suffocate the unions, are the one who's sharing the platform with them. Let's not be hypocritical about these issues. Let's be genuine. Let's be a working class. Let's not use our platform for the sake of being next to the administrators of the country. The working class should unite, be focused, and not to be in the pocket of any political party if really we want to represent the working class in South Africa.
Thank you so much for your time there, AMCU President Joseph Matunjwa, who has to leave us. But we continue with the conversation. Advocate, I heard you nodding. I saw you nodding and really just rallying behind the sentiment. I mean, clearly it shows that the president's challenges are deep and entrenched.
Yes, you know, there is no honesty here. You know, workers are taken for granted. And it must be noted, history is going to judge the COSATU Federation and SSCP very harshly. You understand? The contribution made by COSATU before 1994 and after 1994, I think is taken for granted by the current regime of the ANC. It's an insult. This 3.5 is an insult, is nothing. You know, it's just promoting slavery, you know, and maybe we should propose that COSATU must do a research study, benchmark with other countries. For example, there was a study that was conducted by United Kingdom, and there was a commission called a Low Pay Commission. That commission dealt on the issue of wages, minimum wage, the impact the minimum wage has on workers, the impact that the minimum wage it's contributing towards the most workers being indebted. You understand? They can't afford housing allowance, they can't afford transport allowance. You understand? Even education, basic things. You understand? If you go to public school, it's only the child of a worker who's studying there. You will not find the child of a president of COSATU, the president of the secretary of SSCP, or the president of the country studying there at the public school. You understand? So workers in general, they can't afford. You understand? It's an insult to them, and I propose that this thing, there must be a study, there must be a commission that is there dealing with the issues of a minimum wage, and that commission must report back, and there must be an implementation on that, because we can't continue like this. You know, we must redress the injustice of the past. After 23 years of democracy, we're supposed to be moving forward. You understand? We can't speak about accepting 3.5 at this stage. After 23 years of democracy, ANC being in government, COSATU being the part and parcel of the Tripartite Alliance, and we must accept, the workers must accept this 3.5. This is an exploitation. This is an insult. It must be discouraged. We have a highest level of unemployment. We have a highest level of poverty. We have a highest level of inequality. And both COSATU is supposed to inspire, bring hope to workers. You understand? In rejecting this minimum wage and also in rejecting this 20 rand
Let me bring Sitau Solomon Mahlangu, who joins us on the line, into the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Mahlangu, and good evening to you. We advocate here is speaking about the flip side of the story, the petrol price going up next month, the high levels of unemployment. What is your take on this matter?
Look, the fact of that is that it affects the most poorest, which is the working class in particular, and especially those people who earn the lowest salaries are the one who will be hit very hard in terms of their livelihood. So which means it will be difficult for the working class in particular.
Let me bring in Sanko. We heard Advocate now speaking about a report, and it also reminds me of Stats SA's August report on poverty levels, saying that there's a reversal in the poverty levels, looking at the years 2011 and 2015, and you saying that it's better than nothing.
Well, thanks, Mpo. You see, the difficulty here is to deal with what is called the political butterflies. Political butterflies are those who will fly this side because there's a smell of maybe fat. When that fat is finished, they'll jump there and do that. That is the likes of SAFTU. All of us, we know that South Africa is struggling. All of us, we know we are coming from the 2008 recession, the 2016 technical kind of, where are we going to get the money? But to come here for the sake of popularity and say the 3.5 is not enough, that is the insult. I want to concur with COSATU to say, let's think about a mere domestic worker. Let's think about a petrol attendants. Let's think about all those people who are getting less far from this 3.5. And this, we must not come and turn it to make it for the sake of people and talking. We are talking about to improve the life and the living condition of people who never had the opportunity to get 3.5 in their lifetime. Therefore, those who think it is nothing, can they let those who never get this have an opportunity of testing to get 3.5? It is not our own making. It is the legacy of apartheid that is making us to arrive at these things. Now we are trying to do away the legacy of apartheid. You are expecting miracle that out of nowhere we can create heaven, where there will be manna, where there will be money from nowhere for that particular matter, to come then into the coffers of the government so everybody can get 20,000. Our wish is to see everybody getting living life, decent for that particular matter. But the conditions on the ground determines that no, for now, this is what can be achieved. SAFTU Secretary Vavi himself was part and parcel when all of us wishing 4.5. He never wished 12,500. He wished 4.5. Then he was expelled, not necessarily promoted to go and form something. Today, because he wants to promote whatever he's doing outside, he is misleading the country. We are saying, can it be given a chance? This is a start, it will grow. Our wish is to see everybody getting a decent salary.
Bearing in mind the economic factors are quite clear at this point in time, do you believe that this is something that should be wrestled? Because we heard the president warning against the detrimental economic impact.
It's strange that we are talking about the detrimental economic effect when we are talking about the workers. But at the same time, there's an increment in petrol. And the very workers that have to travel, they do not stay near to the factories and to the work of employment. So if you are talking an increase in petrol, it means an increase in taxes, which they are not going to get subsidies for. There's now there's an increase in VAT, and you know what? When you go to a supermarket and you go buy bread, there is no differential mechanism to say that now, because you are a worker who's only earning 3,500 and you are earning 60,000 rands, and you can buy bread for 3 rands, and this other one can buy bread for it remains the same. The prices remains the same. Now, we are dealing here with systematic and entrenchment of poverty. We are ensuring that our people, they remain in the level of poverty, and this is what we are. And at this stage, I know that my colleagues will be saying that we are trying to gain points. We are not trying to gain points. And the fact of the matter is that we are here to say that let us look at this matter and be realistic. If we are talking about the economic challenges, the very people, the very workers, they are the ones that are going to be hit hard the most.
And talking about the very workers themselves, of course, the very workers are the very voters. How much of an impact could Ramaphosa's confidence in the national minimum wage, will they be feeling this at the polls next year?
You know, Paul, totally speaking, we must not be economic with the truth. There is a solution to deal with this crisis of minimum wage. The ANC went to Nasrec and they took resolution. You understand? We must nationalize strategic sectors of the economy. You understand? In order to provide a minimum living wage. Not a minimum wage, a minimum living wage. If the ANC can implement the resolution that they've passed in Nasrec, economic radical transformation, nationalization of banks and all sectors of the economy, then indeed we're going to provide workers with a minimum living wage. There is this notion of saying if we push for a minimum wage, then we'll be dismissing or we'll be dismissing what you call the so-called investors. How many countries that have decided on issues of dealing away with the neoliberalism policies, and those countries are doing well? You understand? We must not be shy. We don't have to protect the so-called white monopoly capitals here. We must be honest. The ANC is a neoliberal organization that is pushing the neoliberal policies that are so confusing. That is why today they can't speak about a minimum living wage. They can speak about a minimum wage of 3.5. That is an insult. It's possible. Implement Nasrec resolution, then we'll see that indeed you can be able to provide a minimum living wage, so not a minimum wage.
I can see you're itching to say something.
Yeah,
here.
no, actually, I think Lebebi is really misleading. We know, we understand it is our resolution. We are going to implement it, but we have to start somewhere. To say the ANC is mum around this thing, that is wrong. The person who was speaking there is the president of the ANC. He was telling you that this thing is a start. Who else do you want to speak from the ANC except the president himself? We are here to support what the president has said. Comrade and the advocate Levibi, you are occupying a very strategic position in the society. Assist us, be realistic. There's no money. There's no money somewhere where we're just going to pull and pull. Here, no. That is where you go wrong.
No, it's there. If we need to conduct research, if we need to conduct research,
we don't need to talk papers of researches and waste time. We are talking about giving the money.
The issue is implementation and directing
the implementation of RET is going to happen, and it is happening.
Okay,
this is a new talk.
Let's give a chance to get into the conversation.
Let's agree. The people who come here.
Gentlemen, let's hold this so
it didn't come in government.
It's belonging nowhere. Okay. These are the people who just come to the studio and speak, not representing the constituency. Okay. These are the people who are not speaking from the organization.
Let's hold it there with you, sir. Because
I'm speaking in the interest of South Africans.
Too many things have been said here, and those things, most of them, you know, when you are preaching rhetoric and popularism, that's what happens, because you don't even think about the impact of what you are doing. Yes. So don't even think. We said our struggle, the struggle that we must achieve together with the advocates of this world, with the debt organizations, political parties of this world, the struggle that we must wage for the working class and the poor is to change the structure of the economy. And all of us are agreeing that, you know, we are pushing the neoliberal economic policy. So that's where we are in terms of that's where our problems are starting. That's why we are saying from the Federation, can we be listened? So that's why we are saying as the Federation, the first starting point, we've been fighting about the 3 chapters of the NDP, which are reformist in nature, which are not bringing about change. So that's what we've been fighting for. But we cannot, you know, dilute the progress that we've made in terms of changing the lives of our people in terms of the national minimum wage and in protecting employment of those people. That's the first thing that we need to do, because when you speak, you must not speak forgetting that whatever thing that you do, because you are not in the trenches, you are not leading workers, you are speaking in studios like this. When you are with workers, when, by the way, there were consultations. So we must also correct Matunju, because, you know, you differentiate this thing. The national minimum wage was part of the manifesto of the African National Congress, which we are still in the term of the 5th administration.
Should there not be voices here inspiring some glimmer of hope?
So maybe if I were to conclude this thing, we are still in the process of implementing the 5th administration program of action, which include the national minimum wage. So the national minimum wage was started by the former president of our country, and it's taken through by the current president in terms of making sure that it is signed into law. So that's where we are. So this rhetoric is going to push workers further into unemployment. We understand that.
Let me bring in Patrick Craven here from SAFTU. What are your sentiments here? You've been listening in, and we're hearing Cosatu speaking very strongly here, saying that this is going to plunge workers into a very difficult situation. What is your comment there?
Well, it's hard to understand what he means. Does he mean that the current proposed minimum wage will throw workers into difficulty? Well, that's true, but he's agreeing with us in that case. But what I would particularly like to take up is this argument about, well, where's the money going to come from? We must never forget that any country's wealth is produced by the workers. Without the work that people do to produce goods and deliver services, then we would have no money to distribute at all. The central argument here is that in South Africa, the money which the workers create is distributed in the most ridiculously unequal way. By far the majority goes to the people at the top, the elite of monopoly capitalists, and workers have to struggle to get any income at all. The argument about jobs as well is completely false. A living national minimum wage, and by the way, we're not opposed to a minimum wage, but it must be a living wage, will have a hugely positive effect on the economy. Because one of the main reasons why the economy is in such a bad state is that so many thousands, millions even, of South Africans are so poor that they don't even have enough money to spend on more than the absolute basic essentials of life. And if they had a living wage, then they would be spending money in the shops, they would be buying services, and that would then create more jobs for the people creating those new products. This has been proved internationally. In Brazil, under former President Lula, there was a big increase in the minimum wage and increases in social grants, and it led to a huge economic upsurge. And exactly the same would happen in South Africa.
We should correct something here, Mpo, in terms of what Patrick has captured us. We indicated that the rhetoric about, you know, a huge minimum wage in the current conjuncture will throw workers into a crisis and will create unemployment. All what we are saying, we still support the 3.5 national minimum wage as a beginning towards the living wage. So that's what we are saying. We are not moving an inch towards, wavering on our support for this thing, because we think it is the best thing that has happened for workers in many years. By the way, our former spokesperson has spoken to these issues whilst he was with us as the Federation. The former General Secretary of SATU was speaking to these issues whilst they were with the Federation. And we can tell you, when there was public consultation, domestic workers came and say, if you can put us at 3.5, we'll be happy. Farm workers came and say, if you can put us at 3.5, we'll be happy. So there was a full consultation with those who are getting peasant salaries. So we are happy, we are moving ahead. We'll push the government of the African National Congress to make sure that they live up to the promise of making sure that we move from where we are to the living wage.
Okay, we've still got Free Market Foundation Executive Director Leon Lowe on the line here. And, you've heard Cosatu's sentiment here, and also SAFTU, Patrick Craven, also spoke rather strongly about the reasons why a national minimum wage is perhaps a better option to go by here. Do you think that, is there any sort of guarantee at this point that should the minimum wage be 20 Rand, will this translate? Is it realistic to believe that it will translate to the more than 3,000 Rand that is being thrown about and tossed about by my guests right here in studio?
Yes, and Paul, let me just draw attention to the really quite shocking dishonesty that takes place in this discussion. If knows that a minimum wage causes unemployment, they recommend wage, speak about.
We're going to have to come out of that, the quality there, not so great. But let me come back to my guest in studio. Ma'am, you look like you want to say something rather urgently.
Yes, I definitely want to say something. You know, if the 3,500 was actually going to make a difference in people's lives, then we wouldn't be having, we currently have a bus strike, where the workers, who some of them are earning something like 6,000 rands, and they are saying they are struggling because they have to we are dealing with bread and butter issues here. And if we are really throwing them and saying the minimum wage, how many companies? And we must not forget that we are dealing with a capitalist system where they will make sure that they will ensure that they reduce and they will make sure that they will give our people the minimum amount of salaries as much as possible. And secondly, are we going to wait another 24 years before our people get a living wage? Is that what my colleagues are saying?
No, but then if we're to look into this thing, so if we're to look into this thing, you see, when you don't understand issues, and when you understand them from the surface, these are the mistakes that you are doing, because the national minimum wage is not doing away with the wages of those who are earning the 6,000, the 7,000, all of those are we are saying in South Africa, no worker must earn a salary below 3.5 and towards those who are earning 6,000, if they are there in the bus industry, if they are earning 6,000, we are not saying go back to 3.5. So the bill is explicit in as far as that is concerned. So people who were not closer to this thing are the highest speaking without even looking into what is in the bill. So we will not sign anything that will say anybody who is above 3.5 must be taken to 3.5. We are not as stupid as people think we are. We are independent thinkers. We think, and we also think for workers, the workers that we are leading, the working class and the poor that are suffering out of the wages that they are getting, and we've made mention of those workers.
Let me get some analysis from the advocate here. We heard Patrick Craven now speaking about how workers' money will often land in the wrong hands. We can see the turmoil that unfolded in the Northwest with Premier Supra Mahumapelo.
It's true, you know, but the current regime must clean its house, and they must put proper administrators who will prioritize on issues of efficiency and making sure that the majority of our people get services, and they deal away with corruption. But I want to indicate, especially, I want to mention 3 points that COSATU must take into consideration. Number one, COSATU must stand by its resolution that and represent the interest of majority of the working class and push the ANC in doing away with this, the neoliberalist policies, and they must also push, COSATU must push for speediating implementation of Nazareth resolution that will make sure that the strategic sectors of the economy, they are in the hands of the state, and the state can be able to run and provide a minimum living wage, not a minimum wage.
Any closing sentiment from you,
No,
sir?
thanks. I think we are in agreement. It's just there are those who are really pushing this for the sake of causing trouble in the society. But all in all, let it be known that it is a start, and we appreciate the start of this new government. And we just hope it's not going to be another 24 years. It's not going to be another 24 years. It's going to be accelerated in a way that at the end of the day, we are going to enjoy the fruits of this minimum wage as it is. So let's give this new administration chance. Let's support them. Let's stop criticizing. And let us not politicize what is going to benefit the poor, because that will lead us into a terminology of political butterflies. That because we want to be famous, we take issues which are very thorny, then we go with them to the podium, we mislead the masses. And I want to agree with you, Comrade Muniel. Indeed, there's no way where we are saying 6,000 will come down to 3.5. Those people are fighting for increase. They will get their increase, it will go up, it will never go. They are not fighting for decrease, they are fighting for increase. So it's different from what we're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. Our time is limited. I don't know, do you want to wrap up?
Yeah, just to wrap up, you know the point that has been raised in terms of the money that lends into wrong people. And you make mention of Northwest, what is happening in Northwest. What is happening in Northwest is the rejection of COSATU unions, affiliates, NEHAU and the North, that enough is enough. We're not going to stand this thing. So we are going to fight corruption, and we are going to root it out. We need the resources of this country and the money of this country to go to the hands of the people. We are calling all of these colleagues to support the Federation in its fight to change the neoliberal policies which are enshrined in the NDP chapter 1 up to chapter 3 of the We've been talking about this thing. AZAPO has been mum on all of these things. It has never been there. It has never been existing. It is now, coming out because of the national. It is a dead organization. So we need this dead organization to be alive and assist us to fight this, and not to criticize some of the things that are going to benefit the working class and the poor. We need our advocates to say, this is what we think it is the line. This is the starting point. This is where we are in South Africa. We are not in England. So the economic crisis that we find ourselves to be in must be dealt by leaders who are conscious of the impact of what we are to the working class and the poor.
Thank you so much.
Ignorance is a very critical, it's a very sad thing, where my colleague here would be saying that AZAPO has been mum on issues. AZAPO has not been mum on this particular issues. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this particular position where we are saying that we want a living wage for our people. And it's so sad that my colleague here is so ignorant and is not following what AZAPO, probably is not even interested in what AZAPO is saying. That is why the reason why he's saying that AZAPO has been mum. AZAPO has been forever been pushing for a living wage, and it's not taking our people onto a minimum level of wage.
3 ways. Implement Nazareth resolution, you will liberate our workers. Simple.
And let's close off with SAFTU's Patrick Craven here. Just a question to you. Are we going to be seeing you gathering hundreds of thousands of workers again to take to the streets about this very contentious matter?
Yes, and they will be, as one of your guests said, causing trouble. I don't apologize for that. We need to shake up the complacency which we've seen tonight from COSATU and SANCU. This is a serious national crisis that people are being told 20 rand an hour is enough for you. 200,000 rand an hour is fine if you're the chief executive of a company. How on earth can this be reconciled with the Freedom Charter, which the ANC and COSATU both claim to agree, which says the wealth of the country shall be shared between the people who live in the country? This new poverty minimum wage will increase the inequality and mean that it's even less fairly shared between different people. And you say that this is just the start, but how do we know that next year and the year after we won't have exactly the same debate? The employers will say, no, we can't afford a big increase. We'll only have a small percentage increase, and it will become a permanent feature of South African society that the poor are expected to live on next to nothing, while the rich live in luxury.
Thank you so much. That's where we leave it, ma'am. Thank you for your time, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your input on this matter, as well as you, Patrick Craven, as well as the other guests that were on the line. We now take a quick break. We'll be back with more news when we return.